The champagne glass trembled in my hand as I adjusted the straps of my only nice dress. A navy blue number I'd bought on clearance 3 years ago, when I still believed in happy endings. The fabric had grown slightly loose around my waist, a testament to the countless meals I'd skipped to stretch our budget just a little further. Tonight was supposed to be our night. Our triumph. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror of the upscale restaurant where Wyatt's graduation celebration was being held. The fluorescent lighting cast harsh shadows under my eyes, making the exhaustion I'd been carrying for 4 years impossible to hide. My hands, once soft and manicured, now bore the calluses of countless double shifts, rough patches that told the story of a woman who had sacrificed everything for love. The door to the bathroom swung open and laughter spilled in from the dining room beyond. His family. His colleagues. His new world. A world I had helped build brick by brick, dollar by dollar, dream by dream. I thought about the envelope tucked safely in my apartment drawer at home. The one containing every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of documentation that proved what I had given up for him. $53,000. That was the exact amount I had poured into Wyatt's medical education over 4 years. Money earned through split lips from smiling at rude customers, aching feet from 14-hour shifts, and sleepless nights when I worked my cashier job after pulling a double at the restaurant. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop. A text from Wyatt. "Where are you? They're about to start the toasts." I took a deep breath and smoothed down my dress one final time. Tonight, Dr. Wyatt Jacob would officially celebrate his achievement. And I would be right there beside him, finally ready to step into the future we had built together. If only I had known what was coming. The dining room buzzed with the kind of sophisticated energy that money and education created. Wyatt's parents had spared no expense for this celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, and servers moved like ghosts between guests carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than I made in a day. I spotted Wyatt immediately. He stood near the head table, looking devastatingly handsome in his tailored black suit, the one I had helped him pick out and pay for just last month. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his smile bright and confident as he shook hands with professors and potential colleagues. This was his moment to shine. "Layla." His voice carried across the room as he spotted me. "There you are." I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations from people I'd never met but who somehow knew about my role in Wyatt's success. "You must be so proud," an elderly woman in pearls said, patting my arm. "Wyatt told us how supportive you've been." Supportive. Such a small word for such a monumental sacrifice. Wyatt's arm wrapped around my waist as I reached his side, and for a moment, everything felt right. This was what I had worked for. This moment when we would stand together, triumphant. "Everyone," Wyatt's father, Mr. Anthony Jacob, called out, tapping his wine glass with a silver knife. "If I could have your attention, please." The room fell silent. Wyatt squeezed my hand and I felt a flutter of anticipation in my chest. This was it. The moment when Wyatt would acknowledge everything I had done, when he would tell his family and friends about the sacrifices we had made together. When he would finally ask me to marry him now that his career was secured. "As you all know," Mr. Jacob continued, "we're here tonight to celebrate my son's incredible achievement. 4 years of medical school, outstanding grades, and now a prestigious residency at Metropolitan General Hospital. Wyatt, we couldn't be more proud." Applause filled the room. Wyatt's smile widened and he stood a little straighter beside me. "But I think Wyatt has something he'd like to say," his father continued, gesturing toward his son. Wyatt released my hand and stepped forward, accepting a microphone from one of the servers. His eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly on me before moving on. Something cold settled in my stomach, though I couldn't yet name it. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Wyatt began, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. 4 years ago when I started this journey, I knew it would be challenging. I knew I would need support, dedication, and sacrifice. I nodded, my heart swelling. "Here it comes. I want to thank my parents first and foremost for believing in me, for their financial support, their emotional support, and for never letting me doubt that I could achieve my dreams." "Wait, financial support?" I blinked, confusion clouding my thoughts. His parents had helped with living expenses during his first year, but after that, I also want to thank my professors, my mentors, and my fellow students who challenged me to be better every day. The cold feeling in my stomach spread to my chest. Why wasn't he mentioning me? Where was the acknowledgement of my 60-hour work weeks, my empty savings account, my sacrifice? Wyatt's eyes found mine across the room, and for a split second, I saw something there that made my blood freeze. Not love. Not gratitude. Not even guilt. It was pity. And finally, Wyatt continued, his voice taking on a different tone, sharper, more distant, I want to acknowledge Layla. Relief flooded through me. Here it was. Finally. Layla has been a part of my journey. She's worked very hard and I appreciate everything she's done. The words hung in the air like smoke, vague and insubstantial. Worked very hard. Appreciate everything she's done? I felt like I was hearing someone else's story, not my own. But Wyatt wasn't finished. However, as I begin this new chapter of my life as a physician, I realize that I need to make some difficult decisions about my future. The room had gone completely silent. Even the servers had stopped moving, sensing the tension that was building like a storm cloud overhead. Layla, Wyatt said, his eyes meeting mine directly now. You've been there for me during my student years and I'll always be grateful for that. But the truth is, as a doctor, I need a partner who can match my professional and social standing. Someone who understands the demands of my career, who can navigate the social expectations that come with my position. The words hit me like physical blows. I could feel the blood draining from my face, my hands beginning to shake. A waitress and a cashier. He paused, letting the words sink in, making sure everyone understood exactly what he was saying. Simply doesn't fit into the world I'm entering now. I need someone of my own class, someone who can be an asset to my career rather than a liability. The silence stretched on forever. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, some shocked, some pitying, others simply curious to see how I would react. Wyatt's mother had covered her mouth with her hand, though whether from shock or to hide a smile I couldn't tell. His father looked uncomfortable but not surprised. They had known. They had all known this was coming. So tonight, Wyatt continued, raising his champagne glass high, while we celebrate my achievement, I also want to announce that I'll be starting my residency as a single man, ready to build the kind of life and relationships that befit my new status as a physician. He looked directly at me one final time. Thank you, Layla, for your service. But this is goodbye. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Someone gasped audibly. I felt hands reaching for me, voices asking if I was okay, but it was all filtered through a haze of humiliation and disbelief. 4 years of my life, my youth, my money, my dreams. 4 years of believing that we were building something together, that his success would be our success, that love was enough to bridge any gap between us. I had been so naive. Wyatt was still standing there, champagne glass raised, waiting for the room to toast his freedom. His expression was expectant, almost impatient, as if he was annoyed that I hadn't already made a graceful exit. That's when something shifted inside me. The crushing humiliation was still there, the heartbreak still threatened to drown me, but beneath it all, a different emotion was rising. Something harder, colder, more dangerous than grief. I reached for my own champagne glass with steady hands. The room watched, waiting to see if I would break down, storm out, or beg for another chance. Instead, I raised my glass with a smile that probably looked serene to everyone watching. Only I could feel how it cut across my face like a blade. To your success, Wyatt, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent room. To getting exactly what you deserve. I took a sip of champagne, tasting the bubbles mixed with something bitter and metallic, blood from where I had bitten my tongue to keep from screaming. Then I set down my glass, walked through the crowd of stunned guests, and left the restaurant with my head held high and my heart planning revenge. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. I made it exactly 3 blocks before the adrenaline wore off and reality crashed over me like a wave. I ducked into an alley between 2 buildings and pressed my back against the brick wall, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. The sobs came in great heaving waves that shook my entire body. 4 years. 4 years of love, sacrifice, hope, and dreams, all discarded in front of a room full of strangers like I was nothing more than an old textbook he no longer needed. But it wasn't just the humiliation, though, that burned like acid in my throat. It was the casual cruelty of it all. The way he had planned this moment, probably rehearsed it. The way his family had known and said nothing. The way he had let me believe, right up until the last second, that we were celebrating together. I thought about all the times I had defended him to my friends who worried he was using me. You don't understand, I had told them. He's under so much pressure. Once he becomes a doctor, everything will be different. They had been right. Everything was different now. I was alone, broke, and publicly humiliated. And Wyatt was free to start his new life without the embarrassment of a working-class girlfriend holding him back. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I saw what happened. I'm so sorry. Rebecca. Wyatt's cousin. The quiet one who always sat in the corner at family gatherings, observing rather than participating. She had been there tonight, witnessed my destruction along with everyone else. Another buzz. Can we meet tomorrow? There are things you should know. I wiped my eyes and straightened my shoulders. Whatever Rebecca wanted to tell me could wait. Right now, I needed to go home, lock my door, and figure out how to rebuild my life from nothing. But as I walked the 12 blocks to my tiny studio apartment, I couldn't afford the cab fare. Something began to crystallize in my mind. A memory from 6 months ago, when Wyatt had been stressed about his medical board applications. "Layla, you're so much better with paperwork than I am," he had said, spreading forms across my kitchen table. "Could you handle the documentation? I need to focus on studying for my final exams." I had been flattered that he trusted me with something so important. Flattered and stupid. Because I remembered something else now. Something Wyatt had overlooked in his haste to delegate the tedious work to his assistant. A discrepancy in the dates, a detail that hadn't seemed important at the time but that I had noticed and corrected. Or had I? I fumbled for my keys outside my apartment door, my hands suddenly steady despite everything that had happened. Inside, I went straight to my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder, my copies of everything I had filled out for Wyatt over the years. Applications, forms, documents, transcripts, requests. And there, in the medical board licensing application, was the detail that could change everything. Wyatt's undergraduate transcript showed he had completed his degree in May of his senior year. But the medical school application I had filled out for him listed his graduation date as the previous December. A mistake I had caught at the time but had been too rushed to correct properly. Instead, I had simply noted the discrepancy on a sticky note attached to the form, intending to fix it later. But Wyatt had been so impatient to submit everything, and I had been working a double shift the next day, and somehow, the application had been submitted with the incorrect date. The medical school had accepted him based on transcripts that didn't match the graduation date on his application. And now, that same erroneous information had been used for his medical board licensing. It was a small thing. A minor administrative error that most people would have caught and corrected by now. But Wyatt had been so focused on the important parts of his education, the studying, the networking, the building of his image, that he had never bothered to double-check the paperwork his girlfriend had handled for him. The same girlfriend he had just discarded like garbage in front of 50 people. I stared at the documents spread across my table, my heart beating faster as the full implications became clear. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a time bomb, and I was the only one who knew it existed. And as of tonight, I was the only one who had any reason to defuse it. My phone rang, jarring me from my thoughts. Wyatt's name appeared on the screen, probably calling to make sure I wasn't going to make a scene or embarrass him further. I let it ring. It rang again 5 minutes later. Then again. Then again. By the fourth call, curiosity got the better of me. I answered. "Layla, thank God." Wyatt's voice was strained, lacking the confident tone he had used just hours earlier. "Look, about tonight." "Congratulations, Dr. Jacob," I said, my voice artificially bright. "How does it feel to be free of your liability?" "Layla, please. I know tonight was difficult, but surely you understand that I had to make a clean break. For both our sakes." "Oh, I understand completely. You're absolutely right. We're from completely different classes now." There was a pause. "I'm glad you see it that way. I was worried you might react badly." "React badly?" I laughed, and the sound surprised even me with its genuine amusement. "Wyatt, why would I react badly to getting exactly what I deserve?" That's very mature of you, Layla. I knew you'd understand eventually." "I understand perfectly. In fact, I understand so many things now that I didn't before." Another pause, longer this time. "What do you mean?" "Nothing you need to worry about, Dr. Jacob. After all, you have a career to focus on now. A very important, very prestigious career that requires your complete attention." "Layla, you're starting to sound—" "I have to go, Wyatt. I have a busy day tomorrow. Good luck with everything." I hung up before he could respond and turned off my phone. Then I spread the documents out on my table again and began to plan. The next morning, I dressed carefully for my meeting with Rebecca. Not in my work clothes or my one nice dress, but in something in between. Jeans and a sweater that suggested I was doing fine, thank you very much, despite having my life destroyed the night before. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place where Wyatt would never think to look for either of us. Rebecca was already there when I arrived, nursing a cup of coffee and looking nervous. "Layla," she said, standing as I approached. "I'm so sorry about last night. I wanted to say something, but it wasn't your place," I finished, sitting down across from her. "I get it. Family loyalty and all that." Rebecca flinched. "It wasn't loyalty. It was cowardice. I should have warned you." "Warned me about what, exactly?" She took a deep breath. "Wyatt's been planning this for months. Ever since he got accepted to his residency program. He told my mom that he needed to upgrade his image before starting his career. Said he couldn't afford to be associated with working class trash like me? Those weren't his exact words, but... She nodded miserably. Layla, I want you to know that not everyone in the family agreed with what he did. The way he did it was cruel and unnecessary. I sipped my coffee processing this information. But you all knew it was coming. We knew he was going to break up with you. We didn't know he was going to humiliate you publicly like that. Rebecca leaned forward. There's something else you should know. Last month at my cousin Jake's wedding, Wyatt was already introducing himself as single to some of the other doctors' daughters who were there. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. I see. He's already started dating someone new. Dr. Ruby Gabriel. She's a surgeon's daughter, went to Yale, very appropriate for someone of Wyatt's new status. I set down my cup carefully, fighting the urge to throw it across the room. How long? 3 weeks, maybe more. Layla, I'm telling you this not to hurt you more, but because I think you deserve to know the truth about who you've been supporting all these years. I nodded slowly. 2 weeks. He had been planning his new life, complete with a replacement girlfriend, while I was still emptying my savings account to pay for his graduation expenses. Rebecca, I said finally, I want you to know that I appreciate you telling me all this. Really. It helps me understand some things. What things? I smiled, and this time it wasn't bitter or broken. It was the smile of someone who had just figured out the rules of a game she hadn't known she was playing. It helps me understand exactly what kind of man your cousin really is. And exactly what he deserves. Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. Layla, what are you planning? Nothing illegal, don't worry. Nothing that will hurt anyone who doesn't deserve it. But Wyatt made a mistake last night. What mistake? I gathered my purse and stood up. He forgot that I'm the one who handled all his paperwork for the past 4 years. Every application, every form, every document. And sometimes when you trust someone else to handle the details of your life, those details don't get handled as carefully as they should be. I don't understand. You will. Thank you for the coffee, Rebecca. And thank you for being the only decent person in your family. I left her sitting there looking confused and worried. But I had work to do. My first stop was the Metropolitan General Hospital website, where I looked up the contact information for their residency program coordinator. My second stop was the State Medical Board's website, where I found their licensing verification department. And my third stop was back to my apartment, where I laid out all of Wyatt's paperwork one more time and began making phone calls. Hello, this is Layla Tiago calling regarding an administrative discrepancy I discovered in Dr. Wyatt Jacobs' medical board application, I said to the first person who answered at the licensing department. What kind of discrepancy, ma'am? Well, I was helping Dr. Jacob organize his documents, and I noticed that his undergraduate graduation date doesn't match what's listed on his medical school application, which was then transferred to his medical board licensing. I'm concerned there might have been an error that needs to be corrected. There was a pause as the woman accessed Wyatt's file. I see. And what is your relationship to Dr. Jacob? I'm his administrative assistant, I said, the lie coming easily. I've been handling his paperwork throughout medical school. Well, this is certainly something we need to look into. Can you provide the correct graduation date and supporting documentation? Of course. I have copies of everything here. Excellent. I'm going to need you to come in this afternoon to provide those documents and make a formal statement. This type of discrepancy in licensing applications is taken very seriously. My heart began to race. How seriously? If there's been misrepresentation on the application, it could result in suspension or revocation of the medical license, depending on the circumstances and whether it was intentional. Perfect. I'll be there at 2 o'clock, I said. My next call was to Metropolitan General Hospital. Residency Program Coordinator's office. This is Evelyn speaking. Hi Evelyn, this is Layla Tiago calling about one of your incoming residents, Dr. Wyatt Jacob. I'm afraid there's been an administrative error discovered in his medical board licensing that might affect his ability to start his residency. What kind of error? Apparently there's a discrepancy in his graduation dates between his undergraduate transcript and his medical school application. The medical board is reviewing his license right now to determine if it was misrepresentation. Oh my, that's very serious. Is his license in jeopardy? I honestly don't know. I'm just the person who discovered the error while organizing his documents. I thought you should be aware in case it affects his start date. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for calling. I'll need to discuss this with the program director immediately. Do you have a contact number where Dr. Jacob can be reached? I gave her Wyatt's number with a smile in my voice. He should be available all day today. By the time I hung up, I was practically vibrating with anticipation. But I wasn't done yet. My final call was to Wyatt himself. He answered on the first ring. Layla? I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Oh, I'm sure you weren't. I've been thinking about our conversation last night and you're absolutely right. We really are from different classes now. I'm glad you understand. I do. In fact, I understand so well that I realized I should probably return something that belongs to you. Return something? Well, all those documents and forms I filled out for you over the years. I made copies of everything, just to be safe. But since you don't need my help anymore, I figured you should have them back. There was a long pause. Layla, what exactly are you talking about? Oh, just your medical school applications, your board licensing forms, your residency applications. All the paperwork that was too tedious for someone of your intellectual caliber to handle personally. You still have copies of all that? Every single page. Including some interesting discrepancies I noticed but never got around to fixing. The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. What discrepancies? His voice had gone very quiet. Oh, I'm sure it's nothing important. Just some dates that don't quite match up between your transcripts and your applications. The kind of administrative error that someone of my class might make, Layla. His voice was sharp now, all pretense of politeness gone. What have you done? Me? I haven't done anything, Wyatt. I simply noticed an error and reported it to the appropriate authorities. After all, I would hate for someone of your caliber to have their reputation damaged by sloppy paperwork. You reported it? To who? To the medical board, of course. And to Metropolitan General, since they should probably know if there are questions about their incoming residence licensing. I mean, I'm just a waitress, but even I know that kind of thing is important. I could hear his breathing getting faster. Layla, listen to me very carefully. Whatever you think you're doing, you need to stop. This could ruin my entire career. Could it? That seems like quite an overreaction to a simple administrative error. Unless, of course, it's not actually an error. You know damn well it's an error. You're the one who filled out those forms. I'm the one who filled out those forms according to the information you gave me, Wyatt. If there were mistakes, perhaps you should have been more careful about the details instead of leaving them to your liability to handle. Layla, please. I know you're angry about last night, but this isn't the way to handle it. You could destroy everything I've worked for. Everything we worked for, I corrected. Or did you forget whose money paid for that education you're so proud of? I'll pay you back. Every penny. With interest. Will you? That's very generous. Unfortunately, money can't buy back 4 years of my life, can it? What do you want? Tell me what you want and I'll do it. I leaned back in my chair, savoring this moment. Wyatt Jacob, the man who had publicly declared me beneath his notice, was begging me for help. I want you to understand something, Wyatt. Last night you said I wasn't your class anymore. You were wrong. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Layla, I was never your class. I was always better than you. I just didn't realize it until you showed me exactly what kind of person you really are. Layla, please. I have to go, Wyatt. I have an appointment at the medical board at 2 o'clock. They want to hear about how all your paperwork got filled out. I'm sure they'll find it very interesting. Don't do this. I'm begging you. Remember what you said last night? Thank you for your service, but this is goodbye. I hung up and turned off my phone. The medical board office was a sterile place filled with fluorescent lights and government-issue furniture. I sat across from Mrs. Florence, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, as she reviewed the documents I had brought. So you filled out all of these applications on Dr. Jacob's behalf? She asked. Yes, ma'am. He was very busy with his studies and asked me to handle the administrative work. And you noticed this discrepancy in graduation dates at the time? I did. I made a note about it, intending to correct it, but Dr. Jacob was anxious to submit the applications quickly, and I was working 2 jobs at the time. Somehow it slipped through. Mrs. Florence nodded, making notes in Wyatt's file. And you're just bringing this to our attention now because? I had prepared for this question. Because last night I realized that I might not be seeing Dr. Jacob anymore, and I thought I should make sure all his paperwork was in order before I moved on. I would hate for any mistakes I made to hurt his career later. It wasn't entirely a lie. I see. Well, this is definitely something we need to investigate thoroughly. Misrepresentation on medical board applications, even unintentional, is a serious matter. What happens now? We'll need to verify his actual graduation date with his undergraduate institution, review his medical school admission process, and determine whether this discrepancy constitutes grounds for license suspension or revocation. How long does that take? Several weeks at minimum. In the meantime, Dr. Jacob's license will be temporarily suspended pending the investigation. My heart soared, but I kept my expression neutral. I see. And if it was just an innocent mistake? If we determine that it was an unintentional error with no intent to deceive, he'll likely face some administrative penalties but keep his license. However, if we find evidence of intentional misrepresentation. She didn't need to finish. I understood. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Ms. Tiago. It takes courage to report these kinds of issues, especially when it involves someone close to you. I just want to do the right thing, I said, and for the first time in this whole process that was completely true. My phone had 17 missed calls from Wyatt by the time I turned it back on. 17 increasingly frantic voicemails begging me to call him back, to fix this, to explain to the medical board that it was all a mistake. But I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. First, I had one more stop to make. The Metropolitan General Hospital Residency Office was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Dr. Amanda Cameron, the program director, had agreed to see me on short notice after my morning phone call. Ms. Tiago, thank you for coming in. This situation with Dr. Jacob is very concerning. I imagine it is. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. We've been trying to reach Dr. Jacob all day, but his phone seems to be going straight to voicemail. I bet it was. Wyatt was probably too busy panicking to answer calls from the hospital. Is there anything you can tell us about this licensing issue? Dr. Cameron asked. We need to understand the severity of the situation before Dr. Jacob is scheduled to start his residency next month. I wish I could be more helpful. All I know is what the medical board told me, that they need to investigate the discrepancy thoroughly before they can confirm his licensing status. And you don't have any insight into whether this was an intentional misrepresentation? I paused as if considering the question carefully. Dr. Jacob is very ambitious. He's always been focused on advancing his career, sometimes to the exclusion of other considerations. Whether that extends to cutting corners on paperwork, I honestly couldn't say. Dr. Cameron made a note. We may need to postpone his residency start date pending the outcome of this investigation. We simply can't have unlicensed physicians in our program. I understand completely. Patient safety has to come first. Exactly. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Ms. Tiago. Many people wouldn't have bothered, especially given that it might harm someone they care about. Dr. Jacob and I have different perspectives on what constitutes caring about someone, I said. I was making dinner in my tiny kitchen when Wyatt finally showed up at my door. I could hear him pounding on it from down the hall, could hear him calling my name with increasing desperation. I took my time answering. When I opened the door, Wyatt looked like he hadn't slept in days, though it had only been 12 hours since our last conversation. His hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes held the wild look of someone whose perfect world was crumbling around him. Layla, thank God. We need to talk. I thought you made it pretty clear last night that we had nothing more to say to each other. Please, let me come in. I stepped aside and allowed him into my apartment. The same apartment he had always been slightly ashamed to be seen entering, with its cheap furniture and thin walls and view of the alley. Layla, you have to fix this. The medical board suspended my license pending investigation. Metropolitan General postponed my residency. My entire career is on hold because of a simple paperwork error. That sounds serious. Have you considered hiring someone of your own class to help you with this? Perhaps Dr. Ruby Gabriel has some suggestions. Wyatt's face went white. How do you never mind? Layla, Ruby has nothing to do with this. Doesn't she? I hear she's lovely. Very appropriate for someone of your status. I made a mistake with Ruby. I was confused, overwhelmed with the pressure of starting my career. But you're the one I care about. I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. Am I? That's funny because just yesterday you cared about me so much that you publicly humiliated me in front of 50 people. I know. I know I hurt you and I'm sorry. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. Yes. From the pressure, the expectations, the social obligations that come with being a doctor's wife. I thought if I made a clean break you could find someone better suited to your lifestyle. My lifestyle. You mean being poor? Wyatt ran his hands through his hair. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. You were ashamed of me, Wyatt. Ashamed of where I came from, what I do for a living, how I talk, how I dress. You wanted all the benefits of my sacrifice without any of the social cost. That's not true. Isn't it? Then why didn't you tell your family how you paid for medical school? Why didn't you mention in your speech last night that your working-class girlfriend emptied her savings account to make your dreams come true? Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. Because I thought it would embarrass you. Liar. The word hung between us like a blade. You thought it would embarrass you, I continued. Having everyone know that Dr. Wyatt Jacob needed financial help from a waitress. That the great success story of your life was built on the back of someone you considered beneath you. Layla, I need you to call the medical board. Tell them it was an honest mistake. Tell them you take full responsibility for the error. Why would I do that? Because you love me. The silence stretched between us. Wyatt watched my face hopefully, waiting for me to crumble, to give in, to sacrifice myself one more time for his benefit. I did love you, I said finally. I loved you enough to work 60-hour weeks to pay your tuition. I loved you enough to eat ramen for months so you could afford your textbooks. I loved you enough to believe that we were building something together. We are. No, Wyatt, we're not. Because love isn't a one-way transaction. Love isn't using someone up and throwing them away when they've outlived their usefulness. I never used you. Didn't you? $53,000, Wyatt. That's how much I spent on your education. Plus 4 years of unpaid labor filling out your applications, organizing your documents, managing your schedule. What did I get in return? You got my love. My gratitude. I got your condescension. Your embarrassment. Your abandonment the moment you no longer needed me. Wyatt sank into my cheap futon, his head in his hands. What do you want me to do? How can I fix this? You can't fix this, Wyatt. Some things once broken can't be repaired. But the medical board. The medical board is doing their job. They're investigating a discrepancy in your licensing application. If it really was just an innocent mistake like you claim, then you have nothing to worry about. You know it wasn't intentional. Do I? Because I'm starting to think I never knew you at all. Wyatt looked up at me, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Layla, please. I'm begging you. My entire future is at stake here. Your future, I repeated. What about my future, Wyatt? What about the 4 years I gave up for you? What about the career I could have built with that $53,000? What about the education I could have gotten, the opportunities one could have pursued? You can still do those things. I'll help you. I'll pay for you to go back to school, get a degree, whatever you want. With what money? Your residency has been postponed. Your license is suspended. And even if it wasn't, do you really think I want anything from you now? Wyatt was crying now, tears streaming down his face in a way I had never seen before. In all our years together, through all his stress about exams and applications and interviews, I had never seen him break down like this. I can't lose everything, Layla. This is all I've ever wanted. All I've ever worked for. All you've ever worked for? I sat down across from him, close enough to see the desperation in his eyes. Wyatt, when was the last time you actually filled out your own paperwork? When was the last time you handled your own administrative tasks, managed your own schedule, kept track of your own deadlines? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. You've spent so long having other people handle the details of your life that you forgot how important those details are. And now one of those details is going to destroy everything you think you've built. Help me fix it, please. I know I don't deserve it, but... You're right. You don't deserve it. I stood up and walked to my kitchen, pulling a bottle of water from the refrigerator. My hands were steady, my mind clear. I had never felt more in control of my life than I did in this moment. There's something else you should know, I said, returning to the living room. Something I discovered while I was organizing all your documents. Wyatt looked up hopefully. What? Remember your MCAT scores? The ones that got you into medical school. Of course. Do you remember taking the practice tests I bought for you? The ones I helped you study for? Yes, but I don't see. Do you remember the night before your actual MCAT when you had food poisoning and couldn't study? When you were so sick you could barely get out of bed? Wyatt's face was pale. What are you getting at? I'm getting at the fact that I have very detailed records of everything I did for you over the past 4 years. Including emails. Including text messages. Including some very interesting conversations we had about how important it was for you to pass that test. Layla, what are you saying? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old text messages until I found what I was looking for. Then I read aloud. Text from Wyatt to Layla, dated 3 days before I'm panicking. What if I don't score high enough? What if all this studying was for nothing? Text from Layla to Wyatt. Don't worry. I'll help you however I can. We'll figure it out together. I looked up at Wyatt. Remember what we figured out? The color drained completely from his face. That wasn't, we didn't. Didn't what, Wyatt? We never discussed cheating. I would never. Wouldn't you? Because I have a very clear memory of you asking me to help you during the exam. And I have an even clearer memory of telling you that I wouldn't compromise my integrity for anyone, not even you. That's right. You refused. So nothing happened. Nothing happened because I refused. But the fact remains that you asked. The future Dr. Wyatt Jacob asked his girlfriend to help him cheat on the most important exam of his career. Wyatt was shaking now. You can't prove that. It's just your word against mine. I smiled and held up my phone. Actually, I can prove it. I kept screenshots of all our conversations. Call it a quirk of my working-class paranoia. I like to have documentation of important things. You're bluffing. Am I? Do you want to find out? Because I'm pretty sure the medical board would be very interested in evidence that you attempted to cheat on your MCE, even if the attempt was unsuccessful. Wyatt stared at me in horror. You wouldn't. I wouldn't what? Tell the truth about the kind of person you really are? About your complete lack of integrity? About your willingness to use and discard people? That's not who I am. Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting it looks like a pattern. You used me to pay for your education. You used me to handle your paperwork. You tried to use me to cheat on your MC. And when you didn't need me anymore, you discarded me like trash. I made mistakes. I was young, I was under pressure. We're the same age, Wyatt. I was under the same pressure working multiple jobs to support both of us. But somehow I managed to maintain my integrity. Wyatt buried his face in his hands again. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what you've lost. Not just your license, not just your residency, not just your career. You've lost the only person who ever truly believed in you. The only person who sacrificed everything for your dreams. I know I lost you and I'm sorry. I'm not talking about losing me romantically, Wyatt. I'm talking about losing me as a human being who cared about your success. Do you have any idea what it feels like to discover that someone you loved never saw you as an equal? Never saw you as worthy of respect? I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. A different folder than the one containing his medical documents. Do you know what this is? I asked, holding it up. Wyatt shook his head. This is every receipt, every bank statement, every record of every penny I spent on your education. Organized by date, categorized by type of expense, with a running total at the bottom. I opened the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. $53,472. That's the exact amount I invested in your future. Our future, I thought at the time. I'll pay you back. Every cent with interest. With what money, Wyatt? Your suspended license? Your postponed residency? Your brilliant career that's currently hanging by a thread. I walked back to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. Wyatt watched every movement, looking like a condemned man waiting for his sentence. You know what the ironic thing is? I said, taking a sip. If you had just been honest with me from the beginning, if you had said, Layla, I love you but I'm worried about the social pressures that come with my career, we could have talked about it. We could have figured it out together. Would you have understood? I don't know. Maybe not. But I would have respected you for being honest about your concerns instead of letting me believe we were building something together while you were secretly planning to throw me away. Wyatt was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, what happens now? Now you learn what it feels like to have your future decided by someone else's choices. Just like you decided my future for me last night. Are you going to tell the medical board about the MCAT thing? I considered the question seriously. I don't know yet. It depends. On what? On whether you can convince me that you've learned anything from this experience. That you understand the kind of person you've become. I understand. I was selfish, I was cruel, I was wrong about everything. Those are just words, Wyatt. What matters is whether you mean them, or whether you're just saying what you think I want to hear so I'll fix your problems for you. Wyatt stood up and walked to my window, staring out at the alley view he had always found so depressing. What can I do to prove that I mean it? That's not my job anymore. Figuring out how to be a decent human being is something you'll have to work out for yourself. But the medical board investigation will proceed according to their standard protocols. If they find that the graduation date discrepancy was an innocent mistake, you'll face some administrative penalties and probably get your license back eventually. If they find evidence of intentional misrepresentation, I shrugged, and Metropolitan General will make their own decision based on the outcome of the medical board investigation. If I were you, I'd probably start looking into other residency programs. Ones that might be more forgiving of administrative irregularities. Wyatt turned back to me. Is there anything I can do? Anything at all? I set down my wine glass and looked at him. Really looked at him, for what I knew would be the last time. There is one thing. What? You can leave. You can walk out that door and never contact me again. You can let me rebuild my life in peace without having to worry about you showing up to ask for more help whenever your next crisis hits. Layla. You can give me what you should have given me 4 years ago. The respect to make my own choices about my own life. Wyatt stared at me for a long moment. I could see him struggling, part of him still hoping he could find some angle, some argument, some way to manipulate me into saving him one more time. But I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that graduation party 24 hours ago. That woman was gone, destroyed along with her naive belief that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. The woman standing here now knew exactly what she was worth. And she knew that Wyatt Jacob had never deserved her. "Goodbye, Wyatt," I said, walking to the door and opening it. He stood there for another moment, looking lost and desperate. Then finally he walked toward the door. As he reached the threshold, he turned back one more time. "I did love you, Layla. In my own way." I looked at him with something that might have been pity if I had any left to spare. "No, Wyatt. You didn't. You loved what I could do for you. There's a difference." 6 months later, I was organizing inventory in the back room of Chapter and Verse, my small used bookstore, when Rebecca stopped by with coffee and news. "I thought you should know," she said, settling into the reading chair I kept by the back window. "Wyatt's medical license was officially revoked yesterday." I looked up from the box of books I was unpacking. Revoked? Not just suspended. The medical board found evidence of intentional misrepresentation on multiple applications. Apparently, the graduation date thing was just the tip of the iceberg. Once they started digging, they found several other discrepancies. I nodded, feeling surprisingly little satisfaction at the news. The anger that had sustained me through those first few months had gradually faded into something more like indifference. "And the MC thing?" I asked. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "You never reported that." "No. I decided it wasn't necessary. The other evidence was sufficient." "That was generous of you." "It wasn't generosity. It was closure. I didn't want to carry that anger around anymore." Rebecca sipped her coffee and looked around at the bookstore I had built with the money Wyatt had eventually scraped together to pay me back. Partial payment anyway, though it was enough to make the down payment on this place. "You know he's been asking about you," she said. "Has he?" "He wanted to know if you'd gotten his letters." I had gotten his letters. 3 of them over the past 6 months, each one more desperate than the last. I had read them once and then filed them away in the same folder where I kept all the documentation from our relationship. History, nothing more. "He's working as a medical equipment salesman now," Rebecca continued. "Making decent money actually, but he's different, smaller somehow. Like something essential got taken out of him." "Maybe something that needed to be taken out," I said, returning to my books. "Maybe. Layla." "Yes. I'm proud of you. For all of this." She gestured around the bookstore. "For not letting what he did destroy you." I smiled. "He didn't destroy me, Rebecca. He just cleared away the illusions so I could see who I really was underneath." "And who are you?" I looked around at my bookstore, small but mine, filled with stories of people who had overcome worse things than heartbreak and betrayal. Through the front window I could see the busy street where my neighbors stopped by regularly, where I had built something real and lasting with my own 2 hands. "I'm someone who doesn't need anyone else to validate my worth," I said. "I'm someone who learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so much more than the person who hurt you ever imagined you could be." Rebecca finished her coffee and stood to leave. "Will you ever forgive him?" I considered the question, as I had many times over the past 6 months. "I already have, in a way. Not because he deserves it, but because I deserve to be free of him completely." "That's very mature." "No," I said, smiling as I shelved the Rescue Jane Eyre next to other stories of women who had survived and thrived. "That's just very, very expensive education. The most expensive education I ever bought. But unlike Wyatt's education, this one was worth every penny." After Rebecca left, I stood behind the counter of my bookstore, watching the late afternoon sun slant through the windows, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete contentment with my life exactly as it was. My phone buzzed with a text from Brooks, the literature professor who had become a regular customer and recently more than that. "Dinner tonight? I found a restaurant I think you'll love." I texted back, "Yes. But somewhere that serves more than just ramen." His response made me laugh, I promise. Nothing but the finest cuisine for the woman who taught me that used books have the best stories. I closed the shop early, walked home to my new apartment, larger now with actual furniture and a view of the park instead of an alley, and got ready for dinner with a man who valued my mind, respected my choices, and had never once suggested that I wasn't good enough for any world I chose to enter. As I put on my earrings, new ones bought with my own money from my own business, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the confident woman looking back at me. She looked like someone who had learned that the best revenge wasn't bringing someone else down to your level. It was rising so far above them that they became irrelevant. And Wyatt Jacob had become completely, utterly, blessedly irrelevant to my story. The story that was just beginning.